Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. It will soon be easier to identify which vehicles on the island's roads are insured. Transport Minister William Duguid says going forward, insured vehicles will carry a sticker on the license plate. He was speaking in Parliament during debate on the Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2018. Minister Duguid says Barbadians do not need to worry about the security of this new measure.
When you go and produce your proof of insurance, you will be issued the sticker, and which you would put in the top right-hand column of the license plate. This is a tamper-proof sticker. What does that mean? That means that if you try to peel this sticker off, the word void will come up in front of it. It will bubble up, and the word void will come up. So you cannot peel off this sticker off of somebody else's car and put it on yours.
Changes are also coming so that commercial vehicles may be easily identified.
All commercial vehicles in Barbados will now be denoted by a C to denote that they are commercial, and the license plate will be a blue and white license plate to separate it from the private license plate that we used to have in the past.
In the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, Peter Phillips, believes discipline must be restored to the island's roads. He says one way to combat bad conduct is through on-the-spot fines.
I'm also thinking, Mr. Speaker, and I've heard this talked about, of instant ticketing as well, where people are doing fools, they don't wait, because people sit down and wait till they get a ticket, even for parking. You sit down and wait till 6 months pass, and you know you're going through the headers. And Mr. Speaker, we got to move to the next, Deputy Speaker, we got to move to the next level, where persons are fined on the spot and you pay, or go across Colway Street or up, so for whenever, as long as you pay, till you pay the fine.
With the increase in fines for road traffic infractions, government will be using a portion of the money to improve the lives of Barbadians in various communities. This is according to Member of Parliament for Christchurch West Central, Adrian Ford.
This new amendment is going to redound to their benefit. We are going to get some improved street lighting along Maxwell Hill from monies collected. We are going to get roads fixed across the length and breadth of Christchurch West Central. And the Member of Parliament for Christchurch West has indicated to me that, as his neighboring colleague, that is something that he will make sure he moves assiduously to do. I am saying it is these types of revolutionary mechanisms that will carry our country forward.
Minister of Labour and Social Partnership Relations Colin Jordan says the move from road tax from a flat rate to a tax on fuel consumption is a blessing. He believes that Barbadians now have the opportunity to manage how much of a burden the tax will be on their budget.
There's no reason why the senior citizen who goes to the post office once a week, who goes to church once a week, and does very little traveling outside of that, is asked to pay the same amount as the person who has a 10-year-old 3,000cc vehicle. In this regime, that senior citizen is able to manage the amount of road tax that he or she will pay.
Head of the Department of Management Studies at the UWI Cafil campus, Dr. Fillmore Aline, is recommending an incentive for whistleblowers to come forward. Now, he says people are deterred because of the potential negative backlash. He was making a contribution when the Integrity in Public Life Joint Select Committee convened in the Senate chamber yesterday.
Most individuals feel retaliation, ostracism, reprisals, threats. Some have even said that they've been harassed to drop what they were doing in terms of reporting. And some have been also faced in this country with threats of dismissals in terms of reporting. Some have said to me straight, boy, if I had to do this again, I wouldn't. I was forced to leave.
Dr. Allen says to effectively tackle corruption, people should be encouraged to speak out.
The issue is, why should I come forward? One person asked, should you incentivize the whistleblowing? And by having some fund, like what happens in the US, where they have some funds provided to help. But you need to make sure that the whistleblowing legislation has been put in such a way that it encourages and gives the whistleblower the protection to come in.
Personalities from close to 50 radio stations across the United States have been in Barbados for a massive promotion event. As Lisa Broom tells us, it's been happening at the Sandals properties as they hosted what is now their third radio remote exercise.
A #1 song from Jake Owens.
Over the last 2 weeks, an estimated 12 million listeners across the United States have been hearing about Sandals Royal Barbados, as well as some key facts about the island. General Manager Ferry Seafinger says 44 radio stations have been part of the massive promotion event.
So last week we had 25 stations, and they're from all across the U.S., from every single market, and this week we have 19. So it's incredible exposure. We have all department heads, team members that work here. They represent the department. It's very short interview, it's very lively. It's a conversation about what's so nice about the spa, what's new in Barbados, what's happening at Sandals Barbados.
Mr. Seafinger says the aim is to raise awareness about the property and the island, and it has been paying off.
Today we're running 81% for both resorts. We really dropped, but if you were here last week, we were running 100%. So there is, I don't believe there's any resorts that do those numbers in Barbados right now with during low season. So, and we expect that will continue. This is investment. These radio shows are investments for next year already.
Okay, Marie is one of the on-air personalities at a Spanish station in Miami.
It's the amount of people that are hitting me up on direct message on my social medias that are saying, oh my gosh, I want to go there. How do I go there? What's the name of that resort? Let me look it up online. People asking very detailed questions about Barbados.
Mr. Seafinger says there are already plans for expansion next year, and local radio stations will be invited to take part. Lisa Broom, CBC News.
Acting Governor General Kenneth Rudolph Hewitt has been officially sworn in. The brief ceremony was conducted by Chief Justice Sir Marston Gibson in the Grace Adams Suite at the Grantley Adams International Airport. Mr. Hewitt will act until September 16th, while Governor General Dame Sandra Mason travels overseas on a private visit. Government is examining alternative ways of funding health care. Minister of Health and Wellness, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, says traditionally the state has financed health services using tax revenue. However, it's now become necessary to review such funding mechanisms and develop new ones.
One such initiative initiated by the present Barbados government is the introduction of a health services contribution of 2.5%, which is shared between employer and employee. And unlike the traditional way of these funds going to the consolidated fund, the funds from this contribution will go directly to the National Insurance Scheme to ensure that the funds are fully disbursed to the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Lieutenant Colonel Bostic was speaking at the start of a sub-regional dialogue on universal health care in the region. PAHO WHO Program Coordinator for the Caribbean, Jessie Chotin, says it's the first time ministers of the finance and health have come together to discuss the topic.
We need a whole-of-government approach in order to tackle this issue of health financing. Bringing together representatives from health and finance is an important first step so that we can speak a common language and agree on opportunities for increased collaboration at national and also at regional level. While ministries of health are responsible for setting national health priorities, and managing the day-to-day delivery of public health services, it's often the Ministry of Finance that holds the purse strings and establishes the funding levels and releases the budget to finance the operations in health.
Dame Edna Bourne has been hailed as a trailblazer for women in politics in Barbados and abroad. Affectionately known as Dame Ermy, she was the first woman to be elected into the House of Assembly in Barbados in 1951. Delivering a centennial lecture in her honor, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Senator Dr. Rommel Springer, described her as an inspiration to many.
Ermy did not just set precedent for women in Barbados, but for many other women across this region and beyond. Indeed, she was the first black woman to be elected to national legislature in the Caribbean, in North America, and in Central America.
Senator Dr. Springer also highlighted many of the social improvements which Dame Ermy earned for her constituents in St. Andrew.
She lobbied for the laying of a 4-inch main into each of the tenantries. And each tenantry was then given a standpipe. Eventually, persons living in those areas were able to get running water into their homes. She also understood the importance of community development. And very early in her tenure, Ermy constructed the Belle Plaine Social Center, or shall I say the now defunct Belle Plaine Social Center.
Reducing the backlog of cases in Barbados' court system does not get to the root of the problem. That's the view of Chief Justice Sir Marston Gibson, who's instead suggesting new systems are needed to prevent the backlog from happening again.
You're working simultaneously with the criminal backlog and the civil backlog. And so the whole idea is don't try to throw money at the problem and don't try to throw judges at the problem. Put new systems in place. And that's what we're doing.
Sir Marston was speaking at the closing ceremony of a 2-week training course for mediators, people who attempt to resolve disputes outside of the court. More than 40 people participated in the workshops hosted by the Judicial Reform and Institutional Strengthening or Jurist Project. Sir Marston also revealed that Barbados could soon be entering into a mediator sharing agreement with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States.
We are still working on an MOU, but we've agreed in principle that since the training which you've gotten is exactly the same training which the OECS, which is provided in the OECS under the auspices of jurists and the Canadian government and University of the West Indies, that once you are on our roster, you'll be automatically entitled to be on the roster of the 9 Eastern Caribbean countries, and concomitantly, they'll be entitled to be on our roster.
The greatest challenge for the church in the Caribbean is how to be relevant and authentic in a broken society. This assertion from the new Methodist Bishop of the South Caribbean District, Reverend Derek Richards. Speaking at his induction ceremony, Bishop Richards highlighted a number of areas of concern.
The rising threats posed by climate change, making our region very vulnerable. The rising national debt of many of our nation states in the sub-region. The high levels of violence and abuse that our people live with on a daily basis. The rising addiction to pornography, drugs, and gambling. Deterioration in the moral fabric of our society. And the most fundamental challenge is passing the faith to the next generation.
Given these challenges, the bishop says he knows many will see his task as overwhelming.
These realities and others like them confront and sometimes overwhelm the church. Lasting solutions to these problems require serious theological reflection and a willingness to change as individuals, as church, and as society. The church's task is to join in the healing work of God in the world, Sometimes this work involves taking stands that may not be popular.
In St. Lucia, business people involved in the coconut industry are expressing alarm over the latest findings from a Harvard study which labeled coconut oil as poison. 2 decades ago, commentators from the developed countries launched an attack on coconut oil, only later to laud it as one of the healthiest oils on the market. The latest findings are being viewed with skepticism by one of St. Lucia's leading specialists.
The coconut oil debate has been reignited. German Harvard professor Dr. Karen Michels claims coconut oil is pure poison and is unsuitable for human consumption.
Of course they're wrong.
Chairperson of locally based alternative medicine firm Great Physician International, Priscilla Scalions, has rejected Professor Michels' conclusions. Great Physician International operates a local vegan restaurant and a treatment clinic in which coconut oil-based products are used. Priscilla contends Professor Michels' research still fails to explain how coconut oil affected generations of regular users throughout the Caribbean.
The observation that we have, the scientific evidence that we have, is ourselves as St. Lucians and Dominicans and Vicentians and Antiguans, the people who have actually been using coconut oil over the decades, the centuries. Have there been, when we use only coconut oil, was the incidence of heart disease greater than today when we use more vegetable oil, more canola oil, more corn oil, all these synthetically manufactured oil, and when our markets were being bombarded and now presently being bombarded with meat and dairy and poultry imports from the United States of America? I would humbly beg to differ.
The divide over the benefits of coconut oil continues to widen. Celebrity endorsements and support from nutritionists gave the coconut oil industry a shot in the arm in recent years for its supposed benefits as a superfood. Various universities and professors have produced research papers that conclude the contrary. Coconut oil contains more than 80% of saturated fat, the kind of fat that can cause high blood pressure, which can lead to cardiovascular problems.
A young man was stabbed to death during a fight involving 20 men outside a nightclub in Bermuda early Sunday morning. This was the second murder in Bermuda so far this year.
Sunday's murder victim, formerly identified as 25-year-old Danshan Swan. It started when police received several 911 calls just after 12 o'clock Sunday morning about a large fight involving a group of males outside of the Southampton Rangers Sports Club. Acting Police Inspector Jason Smith.
Over 20 males were estimated to be involved in the incident, which spilled onto South Road. During the melee, Danshan was stabbed in the abdomen. He was rushed to hospital by a private vehicle, but was later pronounced dead. A family liaison officer has been assigned to assist Danshan's loved ones at this difficult.
Detectives believe that some of the people involved in the fight are linked to gangs. However, police stress they are in the early stages of identifying whether or not this was a gang-related attack.
A murder investigation is now underway, and detectives are particularly interested in speaking with any witnesses to the melee or persons that have information about Danshan's movement in the hours prior to the fatal stabbing. In particular, detectives are interested in speaking with the drivers of 3 private cars that had passed along South Road at the time of the melee.
Sports is next to the Mark Seal, but before we get there, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
During a hurricane, you should avoid moving around outside unless it is absolutely necessary. This is because of the danger posed by falling objects and the impact of high winds. Cooperators General Insurance, helping you to be prepared this hurricane season.